Danny, I saw a very funny headline yesterday, and I immediately thought of you because it was written by a poet who you respect a great deal. The headline reads as follows: "The Russell Wilson wildfire has burned down to coals, and it's still smoldering. As of next Wednesday, a trade will drop the cap charge from $39 million to $13 million. We just gave that to John Clayton, Danny. Of course, it is the one and only Mike Florio who will not let it go.
The thing I immediately thought of when I read that was Greg Fokker. You might ask, why did I think of Greg Fokker?
Meet the parents, right?
Correct. Do you remember when he tells the story of trying to milk a kitten back on the farm in Indiana? And he says, you can milk pretty much anything with nipples. And then Robert De Niro turns to him and says, I've got nipples, Greg. Can you milk me? That's what I thought of with this story. It's not beating a dead horse. This is trying to milk Robert De Niro. That's what, like, try as much as you can, Florio. You could do everything you want to try and do this. There's nothing coming out. There's nothing that's going to, you could talk about cap charges. If Seattle traded Russell Wilson at this point, the entire franchise, like anybody that collects a paycheck there, should be fired. That's how ridiculous the idea is that it would happen now. That with all signs being that it's water under the bridge, Pete Carroll doing everything he can, they're not going to get how are you going to get a quarterback at this point? Like all of the things, it would make so little sense, yet his cap charge went from $39 million down to $13 million next Wednesday, so keep an eye tuned because it's still smoldering. That's idiotic.
Yeah, but he won't let it go. Why? I don't get it. I mean, in this article, too, he suggested, and he keeps on doing these terrible trade suggestions like he's a 6-year-old playing Madden, but Derek Carr and 2 first-round picks for Russell Wilson. And it's not just Florio, to be fair. There's a lot of national types that seem to think that this is Russell Wilson's last year in Seattle. Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated, who put together a piece and it outlined some of the things that Russell Wilson was looking for, has that same expectation about this being the last year that Russell Wilson will be in Seattle. I don't get it. I mean, my big thing, Danny, is there's zero precedent for trading a quarterback in his prime. I mean, it just doesn't happen unless there's some sort of injury that's taking place. A quarterback of this stature getting traded does not happen.
I agree with you. The question of why it's happening is different from will it happen, right? The question of why it's happening is actually fairly easy for me to decipher, and it's the same reason that story and headline appeared in Florio. There's someone who is interested in fanning the flames that there is continuing unrest here, or that things aren't settled in Seattle, or that, hey, this isn't the last chapter of that conversation. I don't know if that's Russell's actual feeling, but I think all signs point pretty clearly to it being someone who is close to or seen to be close to Russell Wilson that keeps that storyline going. Look, this isn't a mystery for me. I think Russell's agent doesn't believe that the relationship between Russell and Seattle long-term is salvageable. I think he believes that it will eventually end, and I think that whether it's a desire to further disrupt it or he's just trying to sort of further that storyline to keep it going for whatever reason, that's what I think's happening. I think Russell's agent, Mark Rodgers, is continuing to promote the idea that this isn't done.
He's the worst. Really, he's the worst. I mean, why? Why would you keep pushing it? Here's the thing, and I feel like people forget this. Russell Wilson might have a no-trade clause, but he's not going to sit out games. Really, I double dog dare him to. He's not going to sit out games next season.
You don't want to do that, though, right?
But he's not going to.
Yeah, but you don't want to get into that sort of stare down. You ask the question, why is the agent continuing to do this? There's 2 answers to that. One is that it's the interest of his client, like he is advocating for what his client wants, and that there is still, for all of the attempt of Pete Carroll to wallpaper over the discussion, that there's still an underlying unrest about it. The second part is that the agent himself, that his own opinion of it is that the team has fallen into disrepair that the things that Russell Wilson was saying between the lines are right, and he's going to sow that storyline because he believes that is the truth. I don't think this is necessarily some sort of malicious, or this isn't someone who didn't get his way throwing a fit. I think on Russell's side of the equation that there are, and I don't know if it's Russell or not. I don't. But I think on Russell's side of the equation, there are people that think that Russ didn't go far enough, or he's being nice, and that this situation is probably not salvageable, and they'll be back in the exact same place come next February that they were this year, only Russell will be a year older and maybe a year less patient.
If this is Russell Wilson's last contract with Seattle, why would Seattle not franchise tag him should the contract expire? I mean, no matter how difficult Mark Rodgers might be to deal with, the only reason to flip Russell Wilson or to let him walk, which should not happen, would be if he's terrible next year. And
or your team was bad, yeah.
Who's expecting that? And, you know, when you don't have a first-round pick as things currently stand as well, I also think that puts you in a bit of a bind, too. Okay, you might get one for next year, but it's going to be the kind of first-round pick that likely isn't going to give you the avenue back to getting a quarterback.
If Seattle is doing exactly what it should do right now, which is stay absolutely quiet about all of this inanity. They're not going to trade Russell Wilson now. It doesn't matter how low his cap charge went. It doesn't matter if he had to have a zero cap charge. You're not trading Russell Wilson right now because you're not going to get a quarterback. You've built your team with the idea toward Russell Wilson being your quarterback. There's no you would not do it. You would not do it. Now, the second part of that question of why would you just let him walk and not franchise tag him, I don't think you would. But you don't want to say that, right? Like you don't. Those are the cards you burn when you've got no other recourse.
Right.
Like anything in Green Bay, we've just seen. Do not paint your franchise. Do not dare your franchise quarterback to get mad. Don't do that. Don't. If he gets mad and threatens to storm out, then you say politely as possible, well, you know, we're not going to let you go into free agency anyway. We would franchise tag you, but don't burn that card yet.
Yeah, I don't think they have to, but I just feel like this entire endeavor, which is being pushed for reasons that I can't stand, and look, some texters are saying, oh, you guys keep bringing it up. We sort of have no choice but to when the national types are the ones pushing it, and this is what I'm so confused about. I'm having a hard time understanding why they aren't looking at the contract, looking at the actual player himself, who I have a hard time buying would actually sit out games when he cares so much about his legacy. There's just a lot that adds up to it being extremely difficult for Russell Wilson to find himself elsewhere while he is still at the level and at the age that he is currently at.